Next speaker is Congressman King, an Army veteran from Long Island in New York. He's been in the House of Representatives since 1992, and he has served as the chairman of the Committee on Homeland Security in the House. He, like Ambassador Bolton, is a leading critic of the Obama administration on foreign policy, as are probably most of us in this room. He is a frequent guest on Fox News as well as CNN. He's also very vocal on illegal immigration. So please join me in welcoming Peter King.
Thank you very much, Dan. Thank all of you for being here today. Let me especially thank Jennifer Horn for the great job that she does as the state chair. I've had the opportunity to work with her, and I know how dedicated she is, and the results today really show the outstanding job that she's doing. Let me also say that I could almost end my speech now by saying I agree with everything that Ambassador John Bolton said. He is really such an asset, not just to the Republican Party, but to the United States of America. The work that he did in the United Nations as our ambassador was absolutely phenomenal, and we should always, always be in his debt. Let me also thank my friend Matt Mayberry, who's sort of running all over the place today and making sure that this works. Now, listen, I was here last year. I know how enthusiastic everyone was last year, but especially this year, because all of us realize the opportunity that we have in 2016, the opportunity to win back the White House, more importantly, to win back the nation. And it's important for us to do that we have policies that work. It's important for us that we expose not just the weaknesses of those that we're against, it will probably be Hillary Clinton, but also that we have strong policies of our own. And we have consistent policies, and they resonate with the American people, and they are in the best interest of the American people. This administration, as Ambassador Bolton pointed out, has been a failure in virtually every aspect of foreign policy. We had the reset button with Russia, and now Putin is going to the Ukraine and threatening the former members of the Soviet bloc, whether it's the Czech Republic, whether it's Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania. They are all tremendously concerned by what Putin is doing. And our answer, the President's answer, is not to arm those who want to fight back against the Russians. That's wrong. The Middle East, we see, this agreement with Iran is absolutely wrong. The President went into these negotiations with Iran for the purpose of preventing Iran from becoming a nuclear power. Under the President's own admission, even if Iran totally agrees and totally complies with the terms of this agreement, at the end of 10 years, Iran will only be 3 or 4 months away from a nuclear weapon. Their nuclear infrastructure is intact. We are, in effect, enshrining Iran as a nuclear power. And in addition to that, you'll have countries like Saudi Arabia and Egypt and Jordan, all of whom don't trust the Iranians, realize what a threat this will be, and they will look for their own nuclear weapons, and we'll have a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. Then we have ISIS. Let me just say on this, it was a year ago that President Obama said that ISIS was the JV. ISIS is the greatest threat we've faced in international terrorism. They are the first Islamist terrorist group to, in effect, be a nation state. They occupy more landmass than all of Great Britain. This is a tremendous threat to the United States, to Western civilization, and to the values that all of us should share. And it's not just a threat overseas, it's a threat here at home, because now we have hundreds of Americans gone to Syria to fight alongside ISIS. They can come back into the United States, and they are a threat to us to carry out attacks here. Just yesterday, the FBI arrested a man from Columbus, Ohio, who went to Syria to fight alongside ISIS and come back here to carry out terrorist attacks. In addition to that, there's thousands of Europeans who go into Syria to fight alongside ISIS. They come from countries in Europe where they don't have to get a visa to travel to the United States. So all of this means that we are under greater threat than we've been since September 11th from Islamist terrorism. And I come from a district, I lost 150 friends, neighbors, and constituents on September 11th. I never, ever want to go through that again, not just for me, I'm talking about for the country. Never see people have to suffer the way they suffered at that time. And yet, we have to have the policies that stand up. And when the President says last year that ISIS was the JV, I can tell you, I'm the only member of Congress who's on the Intelligence Committee and the Homeland Security Committee. We had briefings 10 months before that, 8 months before that, telling us what a threat ISIS was. How the President could honestly say that ISIS was the JV when we knew almost a year ago what a tremendous threat they were. How General Flynn, the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, also said what a tremendous threat they were. So this is a president whose policies are weak, his policies are apologetic, and in many ways incoherent, which is why countries like Israel and Jordan and Egypt have such little faith in this president and his policies. Now, having said that, though, for us to bounce coherent campaigns in 2016, we have to have real policies. Quite frankly, we have to ensure that we do everything we can to keep ISIS and al-Qaeda and all those affiliates from attacking us. And we have to have candidates. We can't have candidates going around saying the enemy is the CIA, that they're more worried about being attacked by a missile from the CIA in Starbucks than they are about ISIS. We can't have people saying we should shut down the government. If we're going to function effectively, we have to have coherent policies. We have to use every element at our disposal. That includes the FBI, the CIA. It includes the NSA. And despite what some candidates say, the NSA is not listening to anyone's phone calls. No one's going up to anyone's cell phone. They are an effective and necessary component. They were put in place by the Bush administration. I stand by what they're doing. They have stopped any number of attacks. And I just say, I never want to have it on my conscience that an American died or an American was burned to death. An American was crushed in a building because the NSA was prevented from obtaining the evidence that would have stopped that attack. And it's wrong for people to go before the American people and spread this false propaganda that somehow it's our own government that we have to worry about, when the fact is the enemy is ISIS, the enemy is al-Qaeda, and the enemy is Islamist extremism. And I wish that President Obama would say Islamist extremism, and I also wish that people running for president in our party would realize that we have to use every component, every weapon that we have to stop ISIS from attacking us. Also, as Republicans, I believe we have to reach out and try to recreate parts of the Reagan coalition. We have people in this country who share our values 70, 80% of the time. I'm talking about, for instance, building trade unions, construction workers, operating engineers. I'm talking about cops and firefighters who may be registered as Democrats, but they joined the Reagan movement because their first love was for this country. Their first love was for strong national policy. So we have to reach out. We have to let those people know that they are welcome in our party. I have a bit of a bias. My father was a New York City cop. I've known cops all my life. And I also have many people, friends and neighbors, who are construction workers. But I know where these people are coming from, where their heart is. And too often, we give an appearance that they're not welcome, or somehow, because they're union guys, we don't want them. The fact is, they share our values. They're the ones who fight the wars. They're the ones who make our neighborhoods and communities strong. And we have to find ways to reach out to them, to let them know that they are welcome and to be part of our coalition. Also, as Republicans, we have historically been the party which strongly supports the police. And I would say for the last 8, 9 months, the police in this country have been under unprecedented siege and attack from elements of the liberal media, such as the New York Times, from opportunists such as Al Sharpton, and we as Republicans should be more outspoken in defending the police. The fact is, 99% of police do an outstanding job. The fact is, it's the police who are the last line of defense in our country, whether it's in fighting terrorism, whether it's combating crime, whether it's in keeping our neighborhoods safe. And we should be more outspoken in standing with them, not somehow standing on the sidelines or saying that the problem is that the police are too militarized. It may not always be politically correct, and it may not always appeal to those in the media or those that we're trying to somehow think we're going to get this support, but will never be with us on Election Day anyway. But these are real core American values, and we should be out there fighting hard for them. And I just want you to know that whatever I can do for our party, whatever I can do to make sure that we win in 2016, because we cannot afford a continuation of the Obama policies. And John Bolton mentioned on this, too, is what President Obama is looking for. I'm not one of those people who questions his patriotism or questions his dedication. That's not the issue. He has a very, very different philosophy of government than we do. And that's why I think when it comes to issues like Iran, like the Iranian agreement, and I've spoken to people in the administration, I've spoken to people who know what's going on and are not necessarily opposed to the president, but he genuinely believes, I believe that he genuinely believes that if somehow we reach out to Iran, remember he made his apology tour in 2009, if we had less of a footprint in the Middle East, I think he genuinely believed that somehow there'd be reciprocity, there'd be reciprocation from the terrorists. So we pull out of Iraq, what happens? ISIS is created. We step back in Libya, what happens? We see ISIS is in Libya. In Yemen, we sort of take less strong actions than we should, and now the country is divided between al-Qaeda and the Arabian Peninsula and between the Houthis, which are surrogates of Iran. So what we have to do is understand the president's mindset, and I think this now permeates the Democratic Party, which is not the party of Scoop Jackson, not the party of Joe Lieberman, not the party of John Kennedy or Harry Truman, but it's an ideological party which believes that somehow if Iran is treated with respect, if Iran is brought into the community of nations, that Iran will then act accordingly, that we can somehow work with Iran. There'll be a balance of power between the U.S. and Iran in the Middle East. And no wonder countries like Egypt are scared stiff. No wonder Egypt and Jordan and Saudi Arabia and, of course, Prime Minister Netanyahu. By the way, I could just say parenthetically, if the president can find time to sit down with Raul Castro, you would think he would at least find the time to make a telephone call to Bibi Netanyahu after he won the election. I mean, this is... So it's a mindset which somehow is apologetic for the use of American power, which somehow thinks the U.S. has a responsibility for what's wrong in the world, and a mindset that believes if we just act in a more kind and gentle way toward Iran and toward al-Qaeda and some other enemies we have around the world, including too long for Putin, that they will reciprocate and that peace and harmony will come to mankind. The fact is, if America becomes isolationist, if America steps back from its responsibilities, that gap is going to be filled by enemies, whether it's al-Qaeda, whether it's Putin, whether it's just irrational leaders around the world who see American weakness as an opportunity for them to move. So, again, as I said, any of us who went through September 11th, any of us who have seen overseas what has happened and the lack of faith that our allies have in our country knows that we need strong, responsible Republican leadership. But to get that, we have to have candidates, and we have to have platforms, and we have to have ideas and principles which do not apologize for America, which realize the enemy is the enemy, not our own government, and realize that we should not be scaring people with the fictional threats, but focus on the real threats, the threat of Islamic terrorism, the threat of an emerging Russia, and also realizing that the American people deserve the opportunity to live their lives in freedom and prosperity and the opportunity to move ahead, and also realizing that we should bring more people into our coalition so we can truly be governing the way it was under Ronald Reagan and the way it can be again after 2016. So, you've been a great audience. I would love to take questions from you. They can be good, bad, and different. They can be hostile, friendly. The fact is, if someone, whether it's running for re-election for Congress, running for the Senate, running for any office, you have to be ready to take hostile questions. You have to realize that whatever happens in the Republican primaries is nothing as compared to what's going to happen in the general election. You got to be ready to take tough questions. You have to be ready to stand up for what we believe in. The issues are too important to paper over them and make believe we all agree. We don't all agree. We have definite views. We have definite ideas. Ronald Reagan didn't back down. We can't back down either in taking on the Democrats or within our own party. We have to stand for what we believe in, get firm policies, stand by them, and be willing to defend them. And so with that, let me wrap it up. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for your attention, and any questions you have, I'm glad to try to answer. Thank you.
If I can raise your hand, we have time for a few questions. Oh, we already started on this side. Let's go to this side.
Welcome to Nashua, Representative King. I'm a former state senator, so I'm not sort of a fringy individual, just so you get a sense. And I do appreciate your foreign policy, but I must say, I don't know a single reasonable Republican in this state who is not concerned with many of your comments that you've made over the last few years. I think you don't represent the mainstream. And frankly, some of the comments about the bridge and all these sorts of things are not helpful to the party.
Well, first of all, let me just, as far as your first thing, as far as who was not a reasonable Republican. I had any number of people stop me here today and thank me for what I've been saying over the years. So maybe they were unreasonable, but so be it. I will stand by everything I've said. Listen, politics and democracy are competitive. And you have to have an exchange of ideas. You have to have a collision of ideas, if you will. And in the end, the party emerges stronger. And if people can't take it, they should be given out themselves. I have said nothing about anyone that they haven't said about others as well. And I think that I would put my record up for campaigning around this country for Republicans, for standing up and supporting the Bush administration during the really tough times, for standing up for Republicans in Congress, for standing up for the Republican leadership and doing what has to be done. And, you know, others can stand on the outside and talk about shutting down the government or be working against other Republicans in primaries. I don't do that. Whatever I say, and I get up there and I will match my Republican record and my views and my beliefs with anyone in the Republican Party. Yes, sir. I have to make a disclaimer up front. I knew this guy's father back in New York, so anyway, good to have you here.
I remember you as a town councilman.
There you go.
You gave a very strong speech on foreign policy. Can you please share with us some of your ideas on the economy and economic growth? And
Surely.
Thank you.
Yeah. First of all, we have to take back and cut back on controls over business, controls over banking, controls over our financial sector. We have to unleash the American economy. So there are just too many unelected bureaucrats, for instance, under the Dodd-Frank law, who are right now tying down the economy, tying up investment, which is wrong. And as Republicans, we have to work together to pull back those controls. Secondly, we have to change the tax code in this country. We should be encouraging people. We should be encouraging the middle class. We should be encouraging small business. And those are main things we have to do. It's mainly to unleash the economy and to get the burden of government off. Also, education should be decided at the local level. It's important, it's essential that education be, to me, that each state be a laboratory for ideas and school district in those states be ideas. American education has fallen behind. We can't allow that to continue. We have to go forward, and we can't be doing it with the heavy hand of the federal government. Yes, sir.
Sir, I'm wondering if you feel that Pakistan is friend or part of the problem in the context of foreign aid that goes overseas, number one. And secondly, I'm wondering what your views are of Saudi Arabia and whether over the years they have played a duplicitous game in exporting their brand of Wahhabism and in the funding of the madrasas, and it seems that only now they're coming late to the party.
And answer to your second question, yes. Over the years, the Saudis have basically been opportunistic. There's no doubt that they have been, had been subsidizing extreme forms of Islam over the years. Several things have happened, though, in recent years. One, Saudi Arabia has come under threat and attack itself. Right now, Saudi Arabia is terrified of an emerging Iran. So at this moment in time, Saudi Arabia wishes to ally itself with the United States. This is not an alliance of lasting values like we'd have with the British or the Canadians or the Australians. This is, at this moment in time, the Saudis want to work with us because of their fear of Iran and also somewhat because of al-Qaeda. But their main concern right now is Iran. And that's where a president has to be able to take advantage of a situation. And yet, at a time when the Saudis want to work with us for their own purposes, I'm not kidding myself, but that would be to our purpose also, in a way, in effect, though, we're scaring away the Saudis because they don't have faith in this administration. They don't have faith in President Obama. They don't have faith when they see the dealings with Iran and what's going to happen with the nuclear agreement, as it appears to be right now. Also, when it came to Syria in 2013, in September of 2013, when the president drew his red line, and then backed away. Those countries see that. And, you know, you can say what you want about other presidents. We've never had a president who has been so vacillating, who has been such an uncertain trumpet, and has not stood by certain basic American principles in foreign policy, or once he makes a commitment, backs away from it. So the Saudis are reluctant to go all out with us now because, I believe, of a lack of faith they have in this administration. As far as Pakistan, Pakistan, at best, has been mixed. I'm on the Intelligence Committee. I know of different, well, let me just say this. Pakistan goes back and forth, and that just takes statesmanship. It requires tough diplomacy with us. Do I trust the Pakistanis? No, I don't. I don't at all. These are not allies. These are countries that we have to find ways, one way or the other, to have them take the same side as us. And it's not going to be because of love and affection and friendship. It's going to be because of hard diplomacy, threats if they have to be, enticements if we have to do it. But no, do I trust the Pakistanis? No. The Saudis, I do for the short term. Hope that answers your question. Yeah, thank you. Yes, sir. Sure. Okay, then, yeah.
On the subject of energy, New York does not allow fracking. Why?
Andrew Cuomo. To me, that is inexcusable. We have people in New York who want to secede and become part of Pennsylvania. It's, at least it's not Massachusetts, but I mean, it's, no, they want to become part of Pennsylvania. Very seriously, this is a case where ideology is trumping common sense and is hurting our economy. I mean, I can say as a New Yorker, this is hurting us, not just energy-wise, but revenue-wise, job-wise. And the parts of New York would help the most, upstate New York, which have suffered for years, and they see how Pennsylvania is thriving. Fracking, to me, is safe. I voted for it continually in Congress. I support it, and I believe it's absolutely essential. And we have to, as the world becomes more and more dangerous, we're just talking about the Saudis. I mean, these are countries we can't count on. We have to get as much energy supply as we can. We have to build up as much as we possibly can. And fracking is it's environmentally safe, it's sound, and it's something we have to do. So don't blame me for the sins of my Democratic governor. I've enough sins of my own without being blamed for his. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Representative King. You very well articulated the Islamic threat to this country, but an even greater threat is the electromagnetic pulse, whether it comes naturally or through terrorists. What plan would you institute to protect our grid in this country?
First of all, without getting into all the merits of that, because that can be debatable, I'll tell you, the grid, we have to realize anyway, whether it involves cybersecurity, whether it involves electromagnetic pulsing, the fact is that the energy grid is something that we have to be extremely concerned about. And I would just say on that, I'm working with other members of Congress. I'm not as certain as you are, but I do know that it's something we definitely have to look at, and I do have concern. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Congressman King. Thank you. The trade agreements, the TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and International Partnership, where are they in Congress, and what is your view of those?
Basically, I have supported free trade agreements. Right now, there is trying to be a bipartisan effort to go forward. I know that people are concerned about what they see as the loss of jobs. I believe for the United States to be competitive in the world, free trade is to our advantage because we have the best workers, we have the best products, and if we can put protections in these agreements which would provide some protection against those who may lose their jobs, I think it's definitely a net plus to go ahead. So I would support the trade agreements that are being considered, and I would vote for fast track. I recognize, okay, there's a man over here. Yes, sir. Is that a Yankee hat you're wearing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Congressman King.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Sorry about the confusion. My question, you've been critical of certain conservative presidential candidates, Ted Cruz, for example. In my opinion, I think he epitomizes, the conservative values and where the Republican Party should be going. But you've been critical. Why do you disagree with him?
Yeah, I'll give you one example. I think if we are going to say that we can govern responsibly, you govern. You don't shut the government down. You govern. I don't think it sends the right signal to the American people. I mean, our numbers went down. Republican numbers never went down so quickly in such a brief period of time as during the time of the government shutdown in October 2013. And if you're opposed to a law, you don't shut the government down, you repeal the law. And you do that by passing it through the House and the Senate and electing a Republican president to sign it. You can't put yourself in a position where you just shut down the government if you don't agree with the law that's been passed. I just think that sends the wrong signal. That, to me, is not my type of republicanism. Our job as Republicans is to govern effectively and to get the job done, reduce the size of government, and govern effectively.
Congressman King, thank you for taking my question, sir, and thank you for all you do. I'm a future state representative candidate for 2016, and I'm wondering, how do you plan to help get our nation's jobs, and how do you feel about right to work? Thank you, Congressman. Yeah,
it's actually, I believe that right to work should be a state issue. I don't believe that right-to-work laws should be imposed nationally. That, to me, should be a state issue. I know that Scott Walker has been very successful in Wisconsin. In New York, I have had a good relationship with the building trade unions, with the construction unions. In fact, from my neighborhood, Peter Brennan, who was Richard Nixon's Secretary of Labor, and he was head of the New York State Building Trades in New York. And I've found them on issues, whether it's issues of national defense and security. There are certain unions that are very good to work with. Others, believe me, are not. I've been on the other side of them as well. But as far as the American economy, the main thing is to unleash the American economy. It was done under Reagan. I'm not saying we always have to go back to what Ronald Reagan did, even though he was the greatest president of our time, because obviously circumstances have changed, but the principles are the same. And that's to have less government, to have more tax incentives, to do what we can to encourage the middle class, because it's the middle class that really drives our economy, middle class and small business, and we do that by cutting back on government regulations, cutting back on government restrictions, cutting back on unnecessary environmental, we're talking about fracking, that's just a classic example. Unleash the American economy. When it's done, nobody can compete with us, and that's the best way. That, as John Kennedy said, to quote a Democrat, a rising tide lifts all boats. If you get the economy to move, the entire workforce moves with it, and the American people go forward. Yes. This lady, here you go. He's coming over with the mic here.
Hey, Congressman, this will be the last question. So.
During the last election, Republicans in Congress asked for us, the voters, the Republican workers, to give them the majority. Now you have the majority. The voters and all the people who worked here delivered that majority to you. What do you think you've done? I know you disagree with shutting down the government, which I disagree with you, because how did you win the majority? Your poll numbers might have gone down, but you won the majority. So how did that ruin anything for Republicans? But I just want to be positive. What do you feel the Republicans who we gave the majority to, what have they done to stop Obama's unlawful and unconstitutional things?
Well, first of all, let me entirely disagree with your premise about shutting down the government. Any political consultant you talk to, any candidate who is running, every analysis shows that that hurt the Republican Party. We won in spite of that. And it was what saved us was the failure of Obamacare being rolled out. There was nothing, you can't find any place in the country that I know of where that helped the Republican Party, because it showed us as being irresponsible. No, polls overwhelmingly, if the American people are 2-to-1 against what we did, you can't say that's why we won the election, because it doesn't make sense. Ipso facto, it doesn't work. If 2-to-1 are against you on an issue, that issue did not win the election for you. As far as what Republicans can do, I think we in the House are trying to do the best we can, but in the Senate, you have to have 60 votes, and we only have 55 Republican senators, and that is basically the issue. Yes, we won in the House. We, I think, are making progress, and certainly with changes in Medicare, we're making progress. I think you're going to see just this week various on the estate tax, other issues that we pass in the House are working, but the reality is that unless you have 60 senators and a Republican president, you can have government being tied up. I mean, the reason Obama got Obamacare through, they had the votes in the Senate to get it done. We have to do the same thing. We have to keep the Republican House, increase the majority if we can, but also increase the majority in the Senate and elect a Republican president. Because having a president, it changes the whole the whole dynamic, and that's what's essential we do it, but we don't say we're going to be elected by shutting down the government. That's just irresponsible. Because under that, just take this for a second. The way it works now, you have to get 60 votes to pass anything in the Senate. So that means you could get 41 senators could block government from going forward and shut down the government if they, let's say we pass legislation that we think is really helpful. Democrats oppose it. We control the White House, we control the House, and we have 59 senators. They can get 41 Democrats to come together and say, we're shutting down the government unless you repeal the law that you passed. That's why it's such a dangerous precedent to set. That's why I'm against it. That's why I think it's irresponsible to follow that route. Let's do it the Democratic, Republican way of the last 200 years. Vote for legislation, get it through, and then if you're opposed to it, you try to dismantle it, but you do it by the way it was passed, by passing both houses of Congress and have a president sign it into law. You don't just take your toys and walk away. Thank you all very much.